Dr. Angela Puca, welcome to The Container. I just want to begin by thanking you because you offer this incredible free resource on YouTube on the occult that is both academic, it has the academic rigor, and I think is incredibly practitioner friendly, and you don't have to be an academic to really understand the concepts that you deliver. You're able to educate people on such a wide range of issues. So I just want to begin from that place of gratitude. And as a beginning, if we talk about what is really the philosophy behind ritual magic, I guess I kind of want to get your thoughts on, when we're even asking that question, what is ritual magic? What actually does that mean?
The definition of esotericism in academia is not quite universal, but a famous one is by Walter Hanegraaff, who describes esotericism as the rejected knowledge, because it's the part of the knowledge of our culture and humanity that tends to be rejected. Even when you read books of history, you will find that the esoteric side tends to be omitted. For instance, when you study Isaac Newton, you will study about his theories in physics, but they will completely omit all of his interest in alchemy and other such things. So esotericism is a broad category, and I agree with Walter Hanegraaff that it is a form of rejected knowledge, and it is also something that entertains ways of affecting and manipulating reality that are not by conventional means, or means that are fully known and understood. That's why they are often called occult, because they are not visible, they're not seen, they're not fully known and understood. But magic is also another category that's a bit contested itself, because it's been defined in different ways by different practitioners and different scholars as well. A very famous definition of magic is one by Aleister Crowley, which is the art and science of affecting change in conformity with the will. So there's still a sense of affecting one's reality, oneself, and your surrounding by means that are not clearly ascertained, that are not. It's not like, going to a place by driving, which is something that is known. You're using a known mean to go from one place to another. It would be more like traveling from one place to another without the use of conventional means, such as by astral traveling, which is a practice that some practitioners do.
Well, I love this answer because it highlights something I don't think I've ever been clear about with myself, which is the things I do that I call magic are kind of the things I can't really explain why it works. And I'm like also not always able to perfectly say like, well, it worked because I did this. But I know when I do stuff like this, it often, I get the results I'm looking for. But it's interesting. Well, I wonder for you, because you study this and in depth, and I wonder, like, for you, what is this like lifelong deep appeal of the esoteric and the rejected knowledge and the doing stuff that you can't perfectly explain why it works?
My interest in magic and esotericism started very young. I think that from as long as I can remember, I've always been fascinated by magic. I've also always been fascinated by religion more generally, and philosophy. So philosophy, religion, and magic, which in my mind are somewhat connected, or at least I do connect them, have always been the core of my interest. Which is why then I did philosophy as my undergraduate and master's degree, and then religious studies for my PhD, with a focus on magic more specifically. I think that magic is fascinating because it challenges our understanding of both ourselves and our world. we tend to think about our agency as limited by our senses and our bodies and what the physicality allows us. And magic kind of challenges that, challenges the confines, the boundaries, the limits of your agency, of yourself as well. Because if it is possible for somebody else to affect you at a distance, then yourself is porous. So the boundaries of yourself are not as defined and delineated as one may think. So I think that magic tends to challenge a lot of things that and presuppositions that we give for granted, and I find it fascinating. It also seems a way to explore reality and knowledge, the world and the self, in a way that goes beyond what we can visibly see. So yeah, it just feels like a way to go beyond the structures that we know and beyond the understandings that we have of all the primary things in life that make ourselves what we are.
And I'm curious, are you a practitioner? Is that a big part of your life? I sense that you are, but I feel like you also, I imagine, want to create some academic distance too.
I don't share my personal beliefs online. So if you know my work, you will know that, because it is something that I always say, given that people tend to ask me that question a lot. So I just leave it to the imagination of people. I don't really talk about my own beliefs. I just decided to contribute talking about the academic side of esoteric practices.
That's a beautiful answer. It reminds me of something Eliphas Levi, he says to be still is one of the things someone should be. That is often I've heard people interpret that as like being quiet and like, not talking about it. I don't know. I really respect that boundary. So maybe shifting gears, if someone does magic, I think that, or at least my experience is, as soon as you do magic and get any kind of result, immediately you start going like, wait, how does this work? Wait a second. Like, how did that actually work? I believed that it would work enough that I tried it. So obviously I had some inkling this was worth time and effort and resources. But then when it works, you're like, my experience is that all of a sudden you get this shock to the system. Like, wait a second, it actually worked? Like, how does that happen? And I know that philosophers through millennia have offered some ideas, and in your videos you go through really amazing breakdowns of these models. And I'm wondering here if you could share a little bit about these models, like a spirit-based model and a psychological-based model. I know those are two that often are really big when people first get into this. Maybe if you could start there.
Yeah, I do have a video on my YouTube channel, Angela's Symposium, called The 6 Models Every Magician Should Know. And there are 6 explanatory models of magic that I cover. The first one is the spirit model, which is that magical effects arise through relationship with spirits, deities, ancestors, angels, demons, and other than human intelligences. Then the psychological model pretty much suggests that ritual operates through imagination, altered state of consciousness, symbolism, expectation, emotion, and also changes in cognition or behavior. Then there's the natural or energetic model, which is that magic manipulates forces understood as inherent within nature, such as occult sympathies, correspondences, astral light, vital power, or subtle energy. Another model is the fourth model is the information or cybernetic model, which is that magic modifies the informational patterns, the feedback systems or the symbolic codes through which reality is organized. Then the fifth is the sociological or cultural model, where magical efficacy emerges partly through collective belief, ritual authority, social relationships, identity, and culturally established systems of meaning. And then the sixth is the transcendent or the mystical model, which is that magic is directed towards gnosis, liberation, divine union, deification, or the transformation of the practitioner rather than simply producing external results. I treat these as sort of interpretive lenses rather than mutually exclusive doctrines, because a single practice could be explained through several models simultaneously. I also discussed this on my channel with Frater UD, because he also uses this classification. It's something that seems to be appreciated among chaos magicians. And he talks about the spirit, the energy, the psychological and information model, followed by a sort of a meta model. And the meta model is not another theory of how magic works. It is more the pragmatic capacity to move between models according to context. So yeah, my own episode, so if people want to learn more about this, they can see my interview with Frater UD and also my own episode where I unpack these 6 models of magic.
Well, we'll have links for that in the show notes. Those are really good. I'm curious. I like that you organize these as lenses rather than something that we have to maybe choose from, like a worldview where it has to be one of these, and then you have to like build a trench there and like commit warfare from there against all the other models. I do notice in my own heart, as soon as the psychological model, whenever it's brought up, I'm always like, boo, that's the bad guy. I don't know why, but I have some sort of commitment in my heart against the psychological model. I think that I notice that's interesting. I imagine
why is that?
Yeah, why is that? I think for me, it feels disrespectful to the fullness of the experience of magic. Like it's sort of like, to the degree I'm able to experience it and it's able to be my story of magic, then yes, it is psychological in that sense. Like everything I experience works inside a psychological model of me, right? Because it's like coming through my psychology, or it's like working on that level. But it would be like referring to a tree as it's a product of my psychology. It's like, yeah, that is true. Like a tree isn't real. It's only real because I have a story of what a tree is, and there is like some cultural understanding of that word, and when I'm touching something hard, and I could call that the bark of a tree, but that's just like part of my psychology. But then it's like that really it like doesn't really get to, it doesn't get me very far. Like if anything, it like I lose contact with like what it means that there is a tree. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think there are some practitioners that find the psychological model, or especially when it is all really reduced to psychology, they can find it a bit disrespectful towards the spirits, but that's because they adopt the spirit model, so they do believe in that. Whereas people that are completely within the psychological model, they just think that it's a matter of archetypes. So so I don't think that people that are immersed in the psychological model do so out of disrespect. It is just part of what they believe is real. So it's not out of disrespect. It is just because they have a different perception of reality. which is why at the moment I'm running my online course on the philosophy of magic, so that we can explore the different types of philosophical foundations that underlie, well, pretty much the whole history of Western philosophy, but also magic. So we cover reality, the cosmos, so the different philosophical stances on the cosmos, different philosophical stances on reality, and how they affect different magical practices and traditions. The concept of time, whether it is a line, whether it returns and is a spiral or a circle, what different philosophers throughout history have said about that. Then the nature of being, so in this case, what a spirit, daimon, or deity actually is. Then we will cover interaction as well. How does interaction work? How one thing reaches another across likeness or across distance. Then we will cover the self and its relation to the world, the perception and the body, because where magic actually happens is in the practitioner. So in trained perception and the disciplined eye, or the working bodies, gestures, breath, and posture. So it's good to also analyze how the body perceives and what it even means to perceive. Then we will cover agency and free will, language, the efficacy of the word, the value and the moral order in the cosmos, whether in the world there's any ethical structure at all, and also the concept of knowledge and initiation, so gnosis, revelation. So we could also include things like the knowledge and conversation of the Holy Guardian Angel, which is present in the Abramelin and then has been also included in Thelema by Crowley.
That's such a magisterial work to put all of that together. I'm curious.
Yeah, it's been it's a lot of work, and I'm still working on it, obviously, because we've just done the first lecture. So if people want to sign up, they can still do on my website, drangelapuca.com, and they can recuperate the previous lectures via recordings, because the recordings, the readings, learning material will still be available. But yeah, it's going to be a lot of work because it's going to last like 3 months. And now I'm doing research for the third lecture, for instance. So it's a lot of reading and work and writing. But yeah, it's a nice project, quite a massive one.
I imagine you feel there's something a practitioner could really get through academic rigor. And it's a world that often does not take that approach. So it's like really unique. So how do you feel academic rigor kind of contributes to us as practitioners finding our way through such a weird territory?
I think that a lot of practitioners, it seems like there are two types of responses from practitioners. I'd say most practitioners, in my experience, especially the ones that value facts and education, seem to appreciate the contribution of academics. You also have a fringe of practitioners that actually attack us and insult us and say that we are demolishing their practice and their religion. But in my experience, the majority of practitioners actually appreciate the contribution of academics, which is nice because academics, not just me, but all my colleagues. I mean, I'm the one who's public facing and I have my platform, but I know all my colleagues from in the UK, in Italy, in Europe, and even in America. I mean, these are people that dedicate their lives to research for not very much in return. So it is clearly a deep passion they have. And then the research and the things they discover remain available for practitioners and for other scholars alike. So I think the value is sort of getting the facts squared out, because unfortunately practitioners tend to want to pretend that certain things are factual when they are not, because they fit a certain narrative that they really like. For instance, with Wicca, that well, in the early days, it said that it was the oldest religion and it was going back to ancient times. And you have this kind of claim across the board. There are many traditions that claim that sort of antiquity without having really the documents to back that up. But it's also about understanding specific grimoires, even grimoires of ceremonial magic. Gal Sofer, for instance, I've had him on my channel. I've interviewed him. He has recently published a book on the Solomonic tradition and how it actually doesn't come from the lineage that people thought it did, and that is important because it also changes the ritual schema, the ritual practice. So if a practitioner really cares about the accuracy of a specific ritual that dates back to a specific manuscript, then that will be, the contribution of academics will be important, because academics are not led by wanting to prove what they want. They are, because we have very rigorous methodologies, so we have to account for any biases that are at place, and then we have to go for a peer review process. So it means that our research needs to be anonymously approved and verified by other scholars and experts in the field, so that they can check whether our data collection was accurate, how the data was selected, and what was the criterion for inclusion and exclusion, and how the data was analyzed, and the final conclusions made out of them. All of these need to follow protocols that are very rigorous, whereas practitioners tend to want to do sort of confirmation bias and look for things that will just confirm what they want. So personally, I think that academics can contribute to the practice of practitioners that care about accuracy. But I also don't think that practitioners should do what academics say. I have a video on that, a video where I say that's called Academics versus Practitioner, Who Decides? And it is about, it was a bit of a response to an attack that I faced online of people accusing me of wanting to dictate their religion, which I never did. I've never said. You will never find a single video of mine where I say any such thing. But I suppose that some people feel intimidated by academics, so they have to say that you are trying to rule over them, which is not true. I think that if a practitioner has a specific experience that is not confirmed by data, that is still valuable for them. So, for instance, if you have a vision of the goddess Artemis that tells you, "I am Artemis and I'm Isis. I'm 2 and 1. I'm the same goddess, and I'm here for you, and I'm your protectress." So should you discard this vision? Maybe it's a life-transforming experience that you had. Should you discard it because the history does not say anywhere that Artemis and Isis are the same goddess? Of course not. It is still, if that's value for you, if it has meaning and it was transformative for you, then, by all means, use it as your own part of your spiritual journey. The problem arises when people, after having these experiences, want to claim that these are historical facts. And so they go and look back at the sources and try to find the most vague association between Artemis and Isis to say, "Oh, see, Artemis and Isis are actually the same goddess, and my vision was just a prophecy of the truth of the history." So that's when the problem really starts, when you enter the courtroom of the historian without the credentials, without the capacities, and without training to even recognize what a reliable source is and how to analyze it. As long as practitioners are aware that an experience is their spiritual experience, then whatever happens is fine. The problem is when those experiences want to be turned into historical facts when they are not. And I know why practitioners try to do that. I think because they want to feel a validation outside of themselves, but that's the wrong way to go about it. Because if something is not a fact, you're not going to make it fact. You're just going to look as a fool. So you're going to obtain the exact opposite of the result that you want. If you want validation, you're gonna get the exact opposite, because the facts will not change, because you're doing some confirmation bias and grabbing together and stitching together two sources that have nothing to do with each other. Yeah, I think what I encourage practitioners to do is to obviously trust their practice and trust what happens to them, the visions they have, the experiences they have, but to not pretend that they are something other than what they are. They may be very profound spiritual experiences, and that's fantastic, and I'm all for it. But history and personal experience are two different things. So one can match the other. It is possible that somebody might have an experience that does match historical evidence. That's fine, but it can also happen that somebody has a transformative, incredible experience that is completely their own and has no other, correspondence in history or in ancient sources, and that's fine too. It's just important to acknowledge the difference.
I'm noticing that urge to verify our magical experiences as history or reflective of the same kind of knowledge base that an academic would use. In some way, it seems to be a rejection of the meaning of magic. It's like it needs to defer to the science or defer to the historian and win in that realm, because it's like not enough for something to be in the spiritual realm. Does that make sense? That
I think that's because we live in a positivist framework that values what is real, what is physically real, what is part of the physical world, more than what goes beyond the physical world, such as metaphysical experiences, entities, endeavors. So I think that is part of the dominant paradigm that we live in, where only the things that can be weighed and measured have a value and tested have a value, and things that do not have those properties are considered somewhat inferior or even non-existent. So I understand why practitioners that live within this paradigm would have that sort of proclivity, but I'm just trying to encourage people to not do that because they will just end up obtaining the absolute opposite of what they want.
Right. It's like, rather than being justified, it is they enter into a realm where they will be the furthest from justified. That's really tragic in a way. Because and they're driven by these very natural impulses and desires to be, I think, really to be heard or like appreciated or something, or understood and believed. I'm noticing, I want to go back to something you mentioned, which is this impulse often among magical practitioners to want to be using the methods or be in the lineage that's the oldest. That is something you see a lot of places, and I find in my own heart is this desire for the oldest thing is the right thing in magic for some reason. And it almost taps into like a very aesthetic part of my reasoning, where it's the most beautiful, coolest way for it to be, and so that's what I want, right? It's like I don't know if I really have clear reasoning. I know that it's the coolest one for some reason, and that is such a like I've read before, and you probably, I mean, much better than I do, but that a tradition in book writing in the past was that you would attribute it to older writers because that is what would be more legitimizing, whereas nowadays you always want to put your name on it and you want it to be the latest breaking thing. You know, I think like a scientist wouldn't be like, what's the oldest research in this? That would be like so counter to like a scientific
Progress.
approach. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Um, yeah. So could you speak more on that sort of difference of impulse?
It's something that I feel I have to battle all the time, to be honest, because
Yeah.
when, for instance, I talk about Wicca or paganism and the fact that a lot of the original claims are not historically true, people feel it as though I'm attacking their religion, but I'm not, because I always clarify that just because something is recent doesn't make it any less valid or important or valuable as a practice. So I don't understand why there is this perception that something older will be more, will be of a higher value, because when it comes to anything else, really, I mean, would you prefer a computer that's 20 years old, or would you prefer a computer of the latest generation? So why don't people think the same thing about practices? I mean, if Wicca is recent, perhaps we needed Wicca now. It is perhaps a technology of magic that responds to the needs of 20th and 21st century people, and the older traditions from 1,000 years ago don't respond to those needs anymore. So just as we have the technology that responds to contemporary needs that we didn't have 30 years ago, so we can have technology of magic that meet our needs now that were not present 100 or 1,000 years ago. So personally, I find it very odd that there's this fixation on the oldest religion. I think that there is somewhat a perception that going to the oldest means going back to the source, or that if something is old and has survived through the ages, then it means that it is truer, that it is more true than something that is more recent. I personally don't agree with these stances. I don't think that they make logical sense either. The only sense that I could see is more the survival of a tradition. Like if you're part of a tradition, I've had these conversations with friends of mine that are Jewish, for instance, and they see value in the fact that they continue a tradition that is old. So it's more in the sense of being part of a community and being part of a long lineage of a tradition. So in that sense, I can understand it, but not so much when the idea is that, oh, this specific ritual is going to be more effective because it's older. So I think actually I might write an episode on that, because I want to do a bit of research on that, because it's something that, because I personally struggle to understand it, I think that it might be a good subject for me to research a bit more.
It's so interesting. I noticed that, you know, if I was gonna write a movie about someone getting into a magical practice, you would want it to be really ancient. Like from the story perspective, it is cooler, yeah, but it doesn't make a lot of sense. I think it really does touch into, though, this idea of the source versus innovation and what we value. But yeah, you know, even in the Catholic tradition, obviously, which I'm a part of, there's like apostolic succession and connection to that first, the deposit of faith. That's the big thing. But even in the Catholic Church, you know, that the definitions of the deposit of faith become more and more clarified over time. So part of being in the tradition is actually being fully updated. Weirdly, it's actually not about being the most like it was in the past. That's not being more traditional. That's actually like being in violation of the tradition. Like part of the tradition are the changes that have come, or the it's not even a change. It's just like a clarification that has happened along the way. I find that really fascinating.
Mm.
Yeah, and I think it goes to this heart of like part of what we give traditions is the change, not just conservation, but also innovation.
Mm.
Yeah, that seems to be part of being in a lineage is that we contribute, and it, you know, part of the lineage is what it does tomorrow, not just what it was yesterday.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm. I wonder what you think an academic rigor brings to our ability to discern how we listen and how we move as practitioners.
Um, I think the question that you answered is a question for practitioners. I suppose the academic side can contribute in the sense of providing accurate information, historical information, cultural informations regarding a practice, especially when it is anthropological. The sociology of religion can contribute by understanding the social impact or the group dynamics of specific even esoteric groups. Like there are certain group dynamics that tend to repeat, around a specific guru or a specific teacher, and there are also problematic behavior that tend to recur. So yeah, I think the different branches of religious studies can contribute in different ways, not necessarily in terms of assessing whether your practice is effective or not, but more around the context. Like it can give you information about whether a source is accurate, whether that ritual really corresponds to a specific source, the history of a practice, how it used to be done, the cultural elements. Do these elements really belong to that culture or not? The social impact and the group dynamics. So these would be the questions that academics can contribute to. So, and also provide translation to text, which is a good thing, because if it wasn't for academics or scholars, we wouldn't have lots of the magic texts that we have nowadays. I mean, it is thanks to Marsilio Ficino that we have the Corpus Hermeticum, after all, and many other esoteric texts.
I hadn't even thought about that dynamic of using academic research as a way to protect oneself from a lot of the common social dynamics that can recreate themselves over time. And if we're not aware of the history of that, like we're not able to innovate ourselves in the way we structure these organizations and how we operate inside of them to be as productive and beautiful as possible without falling into maybe some of the
cultish,
negative,
cultish type
yeah.
of dynamics.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Which can happen and do happen. So it is important to. I actually also have an episode on cults on my YouTube channel, the dynamics of cults. I made that because I was hoping it would be useful to people to sort of see whether the group that they are in presents those kind of dynamics. So,
wow, that's such like a wonderful contribution to the practice is the safety issues, things like that, and just like good best practices. And that highlights kind of the risks involved in not being very rigorous or not being very well educated in general in this work and in the history of what we're doing as practitioners. If someone wants to get more of your work and support the stuff you do, how do they get there?
So people can support me via Patreon. So they fund me on Patreon. That's a great way to support my work and also to enter my community, which is a fantastic community of academically minded people. So if you want to find a tribe as well as supporting my academic work, that's the best way. And you can also support me on PayPal and check out my services on drangelapuca.com. You will find my online courses as well. There's one on the philosophy of magic that's running live at the moment. And there are other self-paced online courses, one on Italian witchcraft and shamanism, and another one on the left-hand path. So these are the 3 online courses available at the moment on my website. And people can also book tutoring sessions with me, one-to-one sessions. There are even options to evaluate a paper or an essay if people are interested in that. But yeah, those are the ways to find me. And then you find me on all social media and Substack. Sign up for my Substack as either Dr. Angela Puca or Angela Symposium. Those are the 2 names that I use for my social media.
Wow, thank you so much, Doctor, for the work you do and for coming onto the Container. This has been such a pleasure.
Thank you, Jonathan, for inviting me. It was my pleasure.
And with that, the Container is now closed.